So there's a couple of issues to cover. Black power. How can one actually speak against the very concept that would be needed in order to fix the very problems that they're speaking about? So we just need a little bit of clarity on the issue. Now I'm hoping that this is more to your point. I'm thinking that when you hear all the black power talk, you feel as though priorities are out of order. If they're talking about white folk but either aren't talking about what black people are or are not doing, or they aren't talking about it enough. Why not just say that plainly, as opposed to associating that with the ancient concept of black power itself, which is and always has been infinitely deeper than that? We know that that is reactional. Why not call it for what it is, and then even go a step further and identify where exactly the culture of reaction stems from and how to move past it in order to become proactive? And I want to take it further than that as well. Why is it always crime we're talking about when it comes to being proactive? It seems to me that there are a lot of black people who are simply embarrassed as black people by crime statistics. Anytime we're talking about taking control or exercising some power, it's about crime. Why? Because we know that white folk spotlight the underbelly of the black community. And as a side note, that right there is a topic in and of itself. The fact of the matter is that every group of people have an ugly underbelly. The difference is that since white people control the media, they can present the best of themselves and even of a lot of other groups of people as well. But when it comes to African people, domestically and internationally, all they show is our underbelly. It's an absolutely insidious tactic, and if we know anything about the function of media, all forms of it historically, then we know that it's one of the primary ways to transform people's cultures. But again, that's a whole other conversation. Getting back to the issue, my thing once again is that when we talk about gaining control and power over our own communities, why don't we ask the question, who controls our water supply? Who controls the manufacture and distribution of certain goods that we purchase? Who manufactures the cars we drive? Who makes the shoes and the clothes we wear? Who makes the toilet paper we use, the refrigerators, the stoves? Who has the control and the power over all of these things, and why are we so blissfully comfortable with them having that level of power and control over virtually every damn aspect of our lives? That reeks of immaturity, that we are, for all intents and purposes, completely dependent upon non-African people to provide us with the basic necessities of life. All of these things are connected, and it ain't exclusive to African people in America only. It's going on for African people everywhere on the globe. Why? Because everywhere African people are on this planet, we're attempting to live life according to the dominant culture of another people, and we all live to compare ourselves to them. They are the standard by which all else is measured, so when we don't measure up to them, we associate our failure to do so in one way or another to blackness itself. I suspect that that's why these sentiments were, for some inexplicable reason, aimed at the concept of black power. This is the reason why Nana Walter Rodney had to write the book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, because black folk typically associate all around backwardness and stagnation and any ill behavioral epidemic that they see among black people on blackness itself. How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Add an N and an S to the word Africa in that title and you have what has actually happened worldwide. Why do I say this? Because, for instance, in ancient Mali in West Africa, a country that was bigger than all of Western Europe at the time, a country in fact that at the time was the second largest in the world, second only to the Ottoman Empire under Genghis Khan. And in this country, the people who visited and documented it stated that you could walk from one end of the country to the next at any time of day or night without any fear of ever being robbed or having any type of crime committed against you. But we won't critically look at that for a couple of reasons. For one thing, it's black and it's African, and why would black folk in general want anything to do with that? Also, the unspoken rule for black people is that we can look to other people's histories and cultures, even made-up histories, in order to learn about concepts and ideas that we can implement into our daily lives today to make things better. But when it comes to looking to our own history critically and actually trying to learn lessons, concepts, ideas about how we should be thinking and behaving today in order to produce desirable results, the cry quickly goes out. Stop dwelling on the past! And all the various forms of it. And why is that? Because we're only allowed to look back on our history for the record. We're only allowed to look back at our history for pure romanticism, or to basically say, yeah, times were hard back then, but look how far we've come now. But yet and still, it's critical to point out that there was a time when we not only didn't have a crime problem, but we created an advanced civilization, one of many, really, where we also produced all of our basic necessities ourselves, among other things on top of that. What happened? A lot of us like to look at today and act as though this is something brand new that started in this generation. Nevertheless, we had an ugly underbelly to our communities before the era of rap music. Pimps and prostitutes and hustlers and gangsters been around. We been had a crime problem. It's just that back in the day, especially during Jim Crow, we not only had more control of our communities in certain aspects, but mass media hadn't become sophisticated enough in its use to transform our culture into people that emulated pimps and hoes and the like. However, that isn't to say that media wasn't sophisticated enough at the time to transform our culture into one where we emulated that which degraded us altogether. Marcus Garvey spoke on this in the early 1900s, and so did Carter G. Woodson around the same time. It's just that some forms of degradation had already been accepted by us completely, and soon for us, here and now, today, there won't be that much protest anymore to what's being forced down our throats currently. Just need a little more time to pass. People can become acclimated to anything if given enough time and exposure. As far as I'm concerned, this is exactly where things are supposed to be, and things will get worse, because we keep trying to address symptoms of the problem as opposed to the root of it. As long as another people control some of the most basic aspects of our lives, every generation we're going to be sick and tired of some other form of degradation, while the previous generation that's sick and tired of this have already acclimated to that being whatever forms of degradation they got used to eventually in their generation, or even grew up in their previous generation. And when we talk about forms of degradation that our people have gotten used to, which really just means we've developed maladaptive behaviors in response to it. A perfect example would be what you described as manhood or manliness.